Mia never imagined that one small act of kindness would change everything. A simple gesture of helping a disabled boy sparked a life-altering journey. As she offers a hand to a father and his son, little does she know, her life will never be the same again. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a heartwarming story like this. Let's dive into the story of Mia, a waitress whose life will be changed forever by a simple act of kindness. The restaurant was alive with chatter, the clink of silverware against fine china, and the hum of waiters gliding across the floor. It was an upscale establishment where wealthy clients came to escape the mundanities of their everyday lives. Mia, a young waitress in her mid-20s, had grown accustomed to this rhythm. She wore a polite smile as she carried trays laden with food to the tables, but inside she was exhausted. The long hours, the constant pressure to serve perfectly, the low tips. Each day felt like it blurred into the next. Yet Mia kept going. She had to. She was the breadwinner for her family. Her mother's health was deteriorating, and her younger siblings needed support to stay in school. She never expected much from her work. Serving food to rich clients was just a job, a means to an end. The wealthy customers, in their suits and gowns, seldom noticed her beyond her role as a waitress. They came, dined, and left with little regard for the people who made their meals possible. But Mia didn't mind. She had grown used to being invisible. In a way, she liked it. It kept things simple. That evening, as Mia walked between tables, her eyes caught sight of a man seated at a corner booth, his face shadowed by the dim light. He was in his late 40s, wearing a crisp suit, his posture rigid with a quiet tension. Sitting beside him was a boy, no older than 10, but the look in his eyes betrayed a deep sadness. The boy, Ethan, was severely disabled. His arms and legs were immobile, and he seemed to have little control over his body. His father, Jonathan Blake, tried to make Ethan comfortable, adjusting his seat and placing a napkin around his neck. But there was something about their interaction that didn't sit right with Mia. Despite the father's attempts to care for his son, there was an unmistakable distance between them, a loneliness that seemed to permeate the air around their table. Mia had seen families like theirs before, wealthy, successful, but still carrying a silent burden. She knew the look of people who had everything but still felt empty. It wasn't about money, it was about connection, about love. She could see that Jonathan's wealth couldn't fix what was broken inside him. His focus was entirely on Ethan, but his eyes were distant, as if he were carrying an invisible weight far heavier than the gold cufflinks on his wrist. She approached the table with her usual smile, ready to take their order. But, as she did, her eyes couldn't help but linger on Ethan. He looked up at her with wide, bright eyes, but his body remained still. Mia's heart ached for him. The more she watched him, the more she felt a strange pull, a need to help him, to do something. She couldn't just leave him there, helpless and forgotten by the world around him. "Good evening," Mia said softly, her voice breaking the silence that had settled between the father and son. "What can I get you tonight?" Jonathan blinked, looking up at her, his gaze a little sharp, as if he had been lost in thought. "Just water for now," he said, his voice smooth but tired. Then he turned to his son, speaking to him gently, his tone laced with affection, but also with the weight of frustration. "Ethan, would you like to try something different tonight?" Mia could see the effort it took for Jonathan to maintain his composure, to appear calm and collected. She felt an overwhelming surge of compassion for both of them. She noticed how Jonathan's eyes were constantly darting between the menu and Ethan, as if he was trying to balance his needs as a father with his role as a businessman. The pressure was written all over his face. "Would you like some help with him?" Mia asked, her voice gentle, knowing the question was a bit forward. "I can help feed him if you'd like. It might be easier for both of you." Jonathan paused, taken aback by the offer. There was a moment of hesitation before he gave a slow nod. "That would be appreciated," he said quietly, his tone softer than before. Mia stepped forward, her heart racing. She wasn't sure what made her ask, but something in the way Ethan looked at her made her want to help. She carefully took the spoon in her hand and began to feed Ethan, speaking to him softly as she did. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment there was a silent connection between them. He smiled faintly, and Mia's heart fluttered in her chest. She realized that in this moment she wasn't just serving food, she was doing something more. She was offering a piece of her humanity to a boy who had so little control over his own. Jonathan watched from the side, his eyes softening. He was quiet, observing the exchange between his son and Mia, feeling something shift inside him. He hadn't expected to find kindness in a simple waitress. He had no idea how one small moment of compassion could change the course of his day, and perhaps his life. Mia gently spooned the soft mashed potatoes into Ethan's mouth, her hand steady despite the nerves bubbling inside her. She couldn't help but notice how fragile he looked, the way he leaned slightly against his father for support, his small body limp and motionless. There was an undeniable strength in Ethan's quiet resilience, but it was also clear how much he relied on those around him. Mia's heart tightened, and she focused her attention on him, speaking to him softly as she fed him. "You're doing great, Ethan," she murmured, making eye contact with him. His lips curled into a small, grateful smile. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make Mia's chest swell with a strange mix of pride and sorrow. She knew she had done something small, yet significant for him. It felt like the right thing to do. Jonathan, who had been sitting back, watching Mia interact with his son, seemed to relax just a little. His body language softened as he observed the way she treated Ethan with such care and patience. He hadn't expected that level of tenderness from someone he barely knew. He watched Mia with a mixture of surprise and curiosity, his thoughts racing. For a moment, Mia felt like an invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. It wasn't just about feeding Ethan, it was about connecting with him on a human level, something that her other customers, too consumed with their own lives, rarely ever noticed. She felt something stir inside her, an urge to help more, to offer more than just her services as a waitress. She wanted to give something real, something genuine. After a few more spoonfuls, Mia paused. She looked at Jonathan to check if he was okay with what she was doing. He gave a small nod, his eyes softening, and then he smiled at her, the first real smile she had seen from him all evening. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice low but filled with appreciation. Mia smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her. "No problem," she replied. "It's the least I could do." But she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a casual exchange between a customer and a server. She had touched something deeper inside herself. In a strange way, she had helped ease the tension that seemed to hang in the air between Jonathan and Ethan. The silence between them felt comfortable now, like a shared understanding had been formed. Mia returned to her duties, but her mind kept wandering back to the small family at the corner table. She couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's smile, the way his face lit up just for a moment when their eyes met. It was as if, for a brief second, there was no disability, no struggle. Just a boy and a woman sharing a moment of human connection. That moment held more meaning than any interaction she had had in a long time. As Mia moved on to serve another table, she couldn't help but glance over at the corner booth once more. Jonathan was now feeding Ethan, his movements slow but deliberate. Mia noticed how gentle his touch was as he wiped a small smudge from his son's cheek. She saw the love in his eyes, but also the weight of years of responsibility. Years spent caring for a child with a disability, carrying burdens that no one could see. Jonathan caught her gaze and gave her a small smile. For a moment, their eyes locked, and Mia felt an unspoken connection pass between them. She wasn't sure what it was, but it was something that went beyond just kindness or duty. There was a recognition in his eyes, as if he saw something in her that no one else had ever noticed before. It was as though they both understood what it felt like to give everything you had, even when there was little left to give. Mia quickly looked away, suddenly feeling a bit flustered. She wasn't used to being looked at that way, like she mattered, like she was more than just the person bringing food to the table. But the connection lingered in her mind, and she couldn't help but feel that her role in Jonathan and Ethan's lives had shifted, even if only slightly. Later that evening, as the restaurant began to quiet down, Mia passed by their table one last time to clear the dishes. Ethan was now resting, his head leaning against his father's shoulder, his small hand holding on to Jonathan's arm. Jonathan looked up as Mia approached, his eyes holding a quiet gratitude. "Thank you again for your help tonight," he said softly, his voice warm. "You've done more than just serve us food. You've helped in ways I can't describe." His words hit Mia in an unexpected way. She had never thought of her job as more than just serving food. But in that moment she realized that sometimes small acts of kindness could have a far greater impact than any tip or compliment. "I'm just doing my job," Mia replied with a humble smile, though inside she felt something shift. She had done more than just her job. She had given of herself in a way that felt natural, something that went beyond mere professionalism. And for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of pride in her work. Jonathan's smile lingered, and for the briefest moment, Mia saw something in his eyes, something that hinted at an unspoken bond, something that could change the course of both their lives. But she didn't say anything. Instead, she quietly collected the last of their dishes and left, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. Over the next few weeks, Mia found herself serving Jonathan and Ethan regularly. They had become something of a fixture at the restaurant, always arriving at the same time, always sitting in the same corner booth. Every time Mia approached their table, she couldn't help but feel a flutter in her chest. The interactions between them had grown warmer, less formal. Jonathan had started asking about her life, about her family, something that hadn't happened with many customers in the past. Mia found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. One evening, as she brought their drinks to the table, Jonathan looked up at her, his expression thoughtful. "How's your mother?" he asked gently. Mia was a bit taken aback by the question. She hadn't expected him to remember. "She's doing better, thank you for asking," she replied, her voice soft but tinged with gratitude. "She's still in a lot of pain, but the doctors are hopeful." Jonathan nodded, his eyes reflecting an understanding that went beyond words. He had his own set of burdens, things that weighed on him, and Mia sensed that he was trying to offer her the same quiet support he gave to Ethan. "Is it hard?" he asked, after a pause, his voice low. "Balancing everything, your family, your work?" Mia smiled faintly, a touch of weariness in her eyes. "Yeah, it's hard," she admitted. "But I can't afford to slow down. My mum needs me, and my siblings are still so young. I do what I can, even if it feels like I'm running on empty most days." She paused, looking down at the table for a moment. "It's exhausting, but it's also my responsibility. I don't mind, it's just a lot." Jonathan was quiet for a moment, studying her face. His gaze softened with empathy. He was used to carrying the weight of responsibilities, his company, his reputation, his son's care. But it was the first time he'd truly seen someone else carry such a heavy load. He admired her strength, even as she spoke with a hint of exhaustion in her voice. "I understand," he said finally, his tone steady. "It's the hardest part, isn't it? The constant balancing act. You feel like you're always giving, always doing for others, but there's no one there to help carry your burden." Mia nodded, surprised by how well he understood. She hadn't expected such depth from someone she only knew through brief encounters. Jonathan, with all his wealth, was speaking to her in a way that made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in a long time. The realization hit her harder than she anticipated. She had spent years working tirelessly, hiding behind her duties, but in this quiet moment, with Jonathan, she felt like someone actually understood the weight of her life. Ethan, as always, was quietly watching them from his seat. Mia noticed that he had become more engaged in their conversations, his eyes following her movements. Sometimes he would even give her a small, unspoken smile when she checked on him. It was a reminder of the bond she had slowly built with him, one that didn't require words, but rather the simple act of presence. One evening, after Mia had finished serving their food, Jonathan invited her to sit with them for a few minutes. It was an unexpected gesture, but there was something about the way he asked, so genuine, so sincere, that made her feel like it wasn't just another formality. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually took a seat across from them, a little nervous, but intrigued. "It's nice to have someone to talk to," Jonathan said, once she was seated. "Ethan's a great listener, but it's not the same as talking to an adult. Sometimes I feel like I'm going through this life alone. You're the only person I've talked to in weeks who doesn't treat me like I'm a walking bank account." Mia smiled at that, the tension between them easing. "I think it's easy for people to see you as the successful businessman, the person with all the answers, but everyone has struggles, even those who seem like they've got it all together." She shrugged lightly. "I guess that's why I'm just here to serve food, not judge. You never really know what someone's going through." For a moment, they both sat in silence, the weight of their respective worlds pressing down on them, but somehow the silence felt comforting. It wasn't awkward, it was as if they were both finally acknowledging something unspoken between them. "You're right," Jonathan said quietly. "And I guess I've been trying so hard to keep it all together for so long that I've forgotten what it feels like to just be human." He glanced at Ethan, who was gazing at them with wide eyes, listening intently. "It's hard, you know, to be the father of a child who needs so much care. But you don't get to stop. You just keep going." Mia understood that. She had heard the same words from her own heart more times than she cared to count. Life didn't stop just because it was hard, but she also saw something in Jonathan, a vulnerability that he had never allowed himself to show before. It made him more real, more relatable, and she admired him for it. As the conversation shifted back to lighter topics, Mia found herself laughing with them, feeling a sense of ease she hadn't experienced in a long time. For the first time, she didn't feel like the waitress serving a meal. She felt like someone who belonged in that moment, someone whose presence mattered to these two people. The days passed in a blur, and Mia found herself eagerly anticipating her shifts at the restaurant. It wasn't just about the work anymore, it was about seeing Jonathan and Ethan. It was about those quiet, tender moments when their worlds collided. When Mia's life of struggle met Jonathan's life of success, and yet they both found themselves searching for something more. It wasn't just the food she served that kept her going, but the shared moments, the connection. There was something undeniably magnetic about Jonathan, something she hadn't expected. He was not like the other wealthy customers who came and went without a second thought. He had become someone she could relate to, someone who understood the weight of responsibility, the burden of caring for a loved one, the weight of trying to make things right. But it was during one particular evening that everything shifted. Mia was nearing the end of her shift when she approached the corner booth. She had been avoiding them for most of the evening, partly because she didn't want to intrude on their time, but also because she had been grappling with her own thoughts. There had been a gnawing feeling in her stomach for days, an overwhelming sense that something was about to change. The question was, what would it be? As Mia set the water glasses down on their table, she noticed Jonathan's demeanor had changed. There was a tension in the air, a noticeable weight on his shoulders. Ethan was quieter than usual, his eyes fixed on his father. "Mia," Jonathan said as she began to walk away, his voice unexpectedly firm. "Could we talk for a moment?" Mia stopped in her tracks, her heart fluttering in her chest. She turned back to them, unsure of what to expect. She had no idea what this conversation would bring, but something in his tone told her it was important. "Of course," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. She could see the change in Jonathan's expression. It was a mixture of frustration and uncertainty. He motioned for her to sit down, and she hesitated before pulling out the chair across from him. "Everything okay?" she asked softly, looking from Jonathan to Ethan. Jonathan gave a deep sigh, running a hand through his hair. It's been hard lately. Things with Ethan have been more difficult than I care to admit. The doctors are talking about options we didn't want to consider. I don't know how to handle it. I'm just overwhelmed." Mia listened intently, not knowing exactly what to say, but her heart ached for him. She could see the anguish in his eyes, the silent frustration of a man who had given everything to his son, only to be faced with the possibility that it still might not be enough. "You don't have to do it alone, you know," Mia said quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. She was surprised by her own courage. Her voice wavered only slightly. "I don't have the answers, but I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed. You don't have to carry all that weight on your own." Jonathan's gaze softened as he looked at her, and for a moment the walls between them seemed to crumble. He seemed to be looking at her for the first time in a way that went beyond politeness. There was a raw vulnerability in his eyes that made her heart ache. "I know," he murmured, almost too quietly to hear. "But it's hard to let anyone in, Mia. I've been on my own with Ethan for so long. It's easier to pretend I can handle it, to bury the pain. But the truth is, I can't." Mia reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on his. The gesture felt natural, instinctive. Jonathan didn't pull away, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. "I can't fix anything, Jonathan," Mia said softly. "But I can be here, and I can listen. I've learned that sometimes just talking about it is the hardest, but also the most important thing to do." Jonathan looked at her, his eyes searching hers for a moment. He seemed to make some kind of decision, his shoulders relaxing slightly as he nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know why I'm telling you this. You're just a waitress. You don't owe me anything. Mia smiled gently, her heart full. I'm more than just a waitress, Jonathan. We all are. There was a long pause as Jonathan absorbed her words. Finally, he spoke again, his voice firmer this time. I've been thinking about this for a while now, he said, his tone changing. You've shown me more compassion than anyone else in my life, more than anyone in my circle. I don't know what it is about you, Mia, but you have a way of making people feel seen, even when they don't think anyone is looking. He paused for a moment, before continuing. I want to help you. Mia blinked, not quite understanding what he meant. Help me? How? Jonathan took a deep breath, his expression serious. I can help with your family, with your mother's medical bills, with your siblings' schooling. I can provide for you in ways that will make all this easier. You don't have to struggle anymore. Mia froze. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Her mind raced, but she couldn't form a coherent thought. Help? This man, this billionaire, was offering to take care of her family's burdens? It didn't seem possible. I don't know what to say, Mia stammered. Why would you do this for me? Jonathan's eyes softened, and he leaned forward slightly. Because you've already done so much for me, for Ethan, for showing us that kindness is real, even when it feels like the world has forgotten how to be kind. I can give you this chance, Mia. A chance to breathe, to focus on your future, not just surviving. Mia's heart raced. This wasn't just a job offer, it was an opportunity to completely change the trajectory of her life. She couldn't fathom it. But the weight of his words, the sincerity in his voice, told her that this was real. I can't accept that, Mia said finally, shaking her head. It's too much. You barely know me. But I know enough, Jonathan said softly. I know that you're someone worth investing in, and I believe you deserve this. It's not charity, Mia. It's an opportunity. Mia sat back, her mind swirling with conflicting emotions. Could she really accept this? Could she let herself accept help when she had spent so long trying to do everything on her own? For the first time in a long time, Mia felt torn. Torn between her pride and the chance of a lifetime. The days that followed that conversation were a blur for Mia. She couldn't stop thinking about Jonathan's words. His offer had been simple, but the implications were overwhelming. Could she really accept it? Could she allow herself to be helped in such a profound way? She had spent so many years doing everything on her own, working tirelessly for her family, keeping her head above water. It felt impossible to accept that someone, a man she barely knew, was offering to take all of that weight off her shoulders. She tried to focus on her work, but every moment seemed to be filled with thoughts of Jonathan's offer. When she would pass their table during her shifts, she found herself stealing glances at him, at Ethan, and wondering if she could bring herself to take this step. Every time Jonathan spoke to her, there was that warmth in his eyes, an unspoken understanding, as if he knew how hard it was for her to even consider such an offer. And yet, he never pushed. His words were gentle, patient. One evening, as the restaurant grew quieter and the night shift came to an end, Mia was clearing the last few tables when she saw Jonathan and Ethan sitting alone at the corner booth. This time, the atmosphere felt different. There was a certain heaviness to the air, a quiet expectation. Mia walked over to them, her heart beating faster with each step. Jonathan looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw something more than just the concern of a father or the compassion of a businessman. There was something deeper, something that hinted at the weight of his feelings, something more personal, more vulnerable. "Mia," Jonathan said softly, his voice calm but firm, "I've been thinking about what we talked about, and I've realized something. I can help you, Mia, not just with your family's situation, but with your future. I'm offering you more than just financial assistance. I want to help you change your life. I believe you have so much potential that you've never had the chance to explore. You've been so focused on surviving, on keeping everything together, that I think you've forgotten about your own dreams." Mia swallowed hard. She had heard the words before, but they felt different now, more real, more intense. He wasn't just talking about helping her pay bills or take care of her mother. He was talking about giving her the chance to live the life she had always dreamed of, but never believed was possible. Jonathan leaned forward slightly, his expression unwavering. "I'm offering you a scholarship, a chance to study, to grow, to do what you've always wanted to do. I'm offering you the opportunity to step away from the constant struggle and give yourself the time and space to become who you've always been capable of being." Mia blinked in disbelief. A scholarship for her? It felt impossible. She had never even considered the idea of going to school full-time, of focusing on her own dreams instead of just surviving. But here was Jonathan, offering her a chance at something she hadn't even dared to imagine. "I don't know what to say," Mia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Her hands trembled slightly, and she could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. "This is so much. I don't even know if I deserve this." Jonathan's expression softened. "You don't have to deserve it, Mia. You've already earned it by showing compassion when no one else did, by showing up every day, no matter how hard it was. You've earned it by being the kind of person who would do anything for the people she loves, even when it means sacrificing everything for them. And you deserve a chance to live a life that's not just about surviving. You deserve the opportunity to thrive." Mia's breath caught in her throat. His words resonated deep within her, touching a place she had buried for years, the part of her that dreamed of more, the part of her that had once believed in the possibility of a future beyond her current struggles. But that part of her had been drowned out by the daily grind of life, by the constant demands of her family, and the ever-present feeling of never being enough. "Jonathan, I don't know how to accept this," Mia said, her voice trembling. "I've spent my entire life taking care of everyone else. I've never allowed myself to ask for help. And now you're asking me to let go, to trust that I can do something for myself." Jonathan smiled gently. "That's the hardest part, isn't it? Letting go. Trusting that it's okay to accept help, to accept the possibility that you don't have to do it all alone. But Mia, you've already done so much for others. Don't you think it's time to do something for yourself? You've earned this chance just by being who you are. You're not just a waitress. You're not just someone who serves food. You're someone who has the ability to change her life. And I want to help you do that." Mia stared at him, her mind racing. Could she really accept this? Could she really step away from the life she had known for so long and embrace something new, something uncertain? Her pride whispered in her ear, telling her she didn't need anyone's help. But deep down, she knew she had reached a crossroads. She couldn't keep going the way she had been. Something had to change, and maybe, just maybe, this was the chance she had been waiting for. "I don't know if I'm ready," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't have to be ready," Jonathan said softly. "You just have to be willing to try." Mia felt a tear slip down her cheek, a tear she hadn't realized she'd been holding back. She wiped it away quickly, but Jonathan noticed, his expression softening even further. "Take the time you need," he said gently. "You don't have to make a decision tonight, but know that the offer is here. When you're ready, it's yours." Mia took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts. She had spent so long fighting against the tide, trying to keep herself afloat, but now, for the first time in years, she could feel the possibility of something more, something different, something better. "I'll think about it," Mia said, her voice steady now. "But thank you for offering me this, for believing in me." Jonathan gave her a reassuring smile. "I'm just giving you the opportunity, Mia. You're the one who's going to make the change, and I know you're capable of it." As Mia walked away from their table that night, she felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. For the first time, the future didn't seem like an overwhelming force to fight against. It felt like a possibility, a chance to finally breathe. The days that followed Jonathan's life-changing offer felt like a storm inside Mia's mind. She hadn't expected to be in this position, let alone face the overwhelming generosity of a man who, until recently, had been nothing more than a customer at her workplace. The offer he had made, one that seemed like an impossible dream, now lingered over her like an unspoken challenge, a question that she couldn't escape. Mia had always been the one who had to figure things out on her own. From the moment she had become the head of her household, after her father's sudden passing, she had learned to juggle everything, taking care of her mother's health, raising her younger siblings, working long hours at the restaurant, and maintaining the facade of strength. Asking for help, much less accepting it from someone like Jonathan Blake, seemed foreign to her. It felt wrong in some way, as if accepting such a monumental gesture would diminish all the hard work she had done to get to this point. She could almost hear her father's voice in her head. "You don't rely on anyone, Mia. Stand tall, and the world will respect you." That was the mantra she had lived by. She had built her life on the belief that she could do it all, that she didn't need anyone's help because she was strong enough to carry the load alone. But now, sitting with Jonathan's offer in her mind, she realized how exhausting that belief had been. How much it had cost her in terms of her own well-being, her dreams, and her happiness. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at the restaurant, Mia found herself sitting in the small living room of her apartment, her eyes fixed on the flickering television screen. Her mother was resting in the adjacent room, and her siblings were busy with their homework, unaware of the inner turmoil that had consumed Mia for the past week. She had never felt so torn in her life. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her best friend Sarah, who had been trying to get her to open up about Jonathan's offer ever since Mia had mentioned it. "Sarah, Mia, I know you're struggling with this, but why are you fighting it? Why won't you just let yourself accept help? You deserve a break. You've given everything to everyone else. When are you going to start living for yourself?" Mia read the message over and over, the words echoing in her mind. Why was she fighting it? Why was she so afraid of accepting help? She had always felt that if she took something for herself, it would somehow lessen the sacrifices she had made for her family. But wasn't she allowed to want more? Wasn't she allowed to be something more than just the person who kept things together? Her hands clenched around the phone, and she let out a frustrated sigh. She had always believed that strength came from independence, from not needing anyone else. But Jonathan's words had begun to chip away at that belief, and now she wasn't sure where she stood anymore. Later that night, after the house had quieted down, Mia sat on the edge of her bed, staring out the window at the city lights. The weight of her mother's medical bills, her siblings' tuition fees, and the constant pressure to keep everything afloat was suffocating. But what Jonathan was offering her wasn't just financial support. It was freedom. It was the chance to live for herself, to have the time and resources to study, to pursue something beyond survival. She had dreamed about going to college, about having the time to learn and grow, but those dreams had always been pushed aside in favor of more pressing realities. Now, here was Jonathan, offering her the chance to make those dreams a reality. But the fear of accepting that offer still lingered, a constant companion in her mind. Was she really ready to let go of everything she had built? To trust someone else with her future? The idea of accepting Jonathan's help felt both like a lifeline and a betrayal. She had been taught that success came from hard work, not from relying on others. And yet here she was, being offered an opportunity that could change her life in ways she had never imagined. She couldn't deny the temptation, but the fear of letting go was paralyzing. As she lay down that night, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. She wanted to take this chance, to step into a life that was more than just about surviving. But she didn't know how to make that leap. She didn't know how to trust that it would all work out. Mia's internal struggle continued over the next few days. She tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on her work and her family, but the offer was always there, lurking in the back of her mind. Every time she saw Jonathan, she felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt. He was offering her a future, but could she accept it without losing herself in the process? One evening, after a particularly draining shift, Mia stood outside the restaurant for a moment, taking in the cool night air. She needed a break, needed to clear her head. As she stood there, a voice called out from behind her. She turned around to see Jonathan walking toward her, his expression unreadable, but his eyes kind. "Mia," he said, his voice low. "Have you thought about what we talked about?" Mia hesitated, her heart pounding. She had thought about little else. I'm still not sure if I can accept your offer, Jonathan. I don't know if I'm ready to let go." Jonathan nodded, his face thoughtful. "I understand. It's not an easy decision, but remember, you don't have to make this decision alone. You've already carried so much, Mia. Don't be afraid to take the help that's being offered. It's not a weakness, it's a step toward something better, a step toward the life you deserve." Mia felt a lump form in her throat, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She had never allowed herself to dream of something more, something beyond the daily grind. But now, standing before Jonathan, she realized that maybe, just maybe, it was time to let herself live. "I'll think about it," she said softly, her voice shaky. "But thank you for everything." Jonathan gave her a small, understanding smile. "Take your time, Mia. I'm here whenever you're ready." As Mia watched him walk away, she felt a sense of clarity begin to settle within her. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long while, she was beginning to believe that the future could hold something beautiful. All she had to do was let go and trust that it was okay to take a step forward. The days that followed felt like a slow march towards an inevitable choice. Mia had tried to push the decision out of her mind, focusing on the small things, her family, her work, the daily routine that kept her anchored. But the offer Jonathan had extended lingered in her thoughts like an unspoken question hanging in the air. No matter how much she tried to bury it, the reality was clear. She had to decide. The question was no longer about whether or not she could accept the offer. It was about whether she had the courage to take the chance. It was late one evening after a long shift at the restaurant when Mia found herself sitting alone on the edge of her bed, her mind spinning. The house was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of traffic outside. Her mother had gone to bed early, and her younger siblings were studying in their rooms. For a brief moment, Mia allowed herself to sit in the silence, letting the weight of the decision wash over her. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. Jonathan's words, his offer, the future he had promised her, all swirling in her mind. She had never felt so torn in her life. Part of her wanted to leap into the unknown, to take the opportunity that had been presented to her. But another part of her, the part that had carried the weight of responsibility for so long, was terrified. She had always believed that strength came from independence, that asking for help made her weak. And yet, here she was, being offered something more than she could have ever imagined. Could she really accept it? She looked over at the small desk in her room, where she had placed the letters from the hospitals, the bills that had accumulated over the months. She knew her family couldn't keep going like this, barely getting by. Her mother's health was deteriorating, and her siblings' education depended on her ability to provide. She couldn't deny that the weight of all these responsibilities had taken its toll on her. But now Jonathan had offered her a way out, a way to change everything, a chance to build something better, not just for her family, but for herself. The question was, could she let herself take it? Mia stood up and walked over to the window, gazing out at the city below. The streets were alive with activity, the world moving forward, while she felt like she was stuck in place. Her whole life had been about surviving, about taking care of others, about putting her own dreams aside. But now, the opportunity to chase those dreams was in front of her. For the first time, she realized that she didn't have to choose between her family and her own future. She could have both, but only if she allowed herself to accept the help that had been offered. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, interrupting her thoughts. She picked it up, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the name. It was a message from Sarah. Sarah. Mia, I've been thinking about you. I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, but I just want you to know that no matter what you decide, you deserve this chance. Don't let fear hold you back. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. It's time to take care of yourself. Mia felt a lump form in her throat. Sarah had always been her biggest supporter, always encouraging her to pursue her dreams, even when Mia didn't have the strength to believe in them herself. Her words felt like a final push, a reminder that she wasn't alone. Maybe it was time to stop fighting the inevitable. Mia put the phone down and walked back to the edge of her bed, sitting down with a deep sigh. She closed her eyes and thought about her family, about her mother's warm smile when she saw Mia's hard work paying off, about her siblings' laughter and the hope that filled their eyes despite the hardships they faced. They were the reason she had pushed herself so hard, the reason she had never given up. But now she realized that her dreams were important too. Her future mattered just as much as theirs. Jonathan had seen something in her, something she had forgotten about herself. He had given her the chance to dream again, to live a life where she wasn't just surviving but thriving. And it wasn't about the money or the scholarship, it was about the opportunity to finally take a step forward, to invest in herself. Mia took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she picked up her phone and typed a message to Jonathan. Mia, I've thought about your offer and I'm ready. I want to take the chance. I want to build a future, not just for my family, but for myself. Thank you for believing in me. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The moment the message left her phone, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had made the decision. She had chosen to trust that she was worthy of this opportunity, that she deserved a chance to live for herself. The future was no longer a distant, unreachable thing. It was here, right in front of her, waiting for her to take that first step. The phone buzzed again, and Mia looked at the screen to see Jonathan's reply. Jonathan: "I'm proud of you, Mia. You've made the right choice. I'll be here every step of the way." For the first time in a long while, Mia smiled to herself. She had taken the leap. And though she didn't know exactly what the future held, she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer alone in the journey. The first few weeks after making the decision were a whirlwind for Mia. The life she had known, one dominated by constant work, exhaustion, and sacrifice, began to fade as she stepped into a new chapter. She had left the familiar chaos behind, accepting Jonathan's offer and stepping into a world she never thought possible. As she transitioned from waitress to student, from caretaker to someone allowed to care for herself, the transformation wasn't just external, it was deeply emotional. Mia threw herself into her studies with the same fervor she had once given to her family. Jonathan had arranged for a full scholarship to a local university, and with it came a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, she wasn't just living for others, she was living for herself. Every day, she woke up with a sense of purpose, knowing that she was building a future that was hers to shape. At first, it was hard to let go of the old ways. Mia had been so used to juggling multiple responsibilities at once, her family's needs, the demands of her job, and the constant pressure to survive. But now, as she walked through the university's campus, carrying her books with a sense of pride, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. It was a quiet, powerful feeling that grew with each passing day. Every class she attended, every new thing she learned, was a reminder that there was more to life than just surviving. There was living. There was thriving. Her relationship with her family also began to change. At first, Mia had felt guilty for accepting Jonathan's help. She feared that her family would see her as abandoning them, that they might think she was putting her own dreams ahead of their needs. But as she spoke to her mother and siblings about her decision, she realized something important. They wanted her to succeed. They wanted her to have the opportunities they never had. Mia's mother, though initially reluctant, soon saw how happy and energized Mia was. It was clear that this was what Mia needed, not just for herself, but for them all. Her younger siblings noticed the difference in her too. They saw their sister, not just as the person who held the family together, but as someone who was now chasing her own dreams. It was inspiring. Mia's new energy became a source of motivation for them. They began to dream a little bigger too. They could see that their sister wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. The weight of the past few years, the constant stress of trying to keep everything afloat, slowly began to lift from her shoulders. Mia still checked in on her family regularly, helping where she could, but now there was space in her life for her own aspirations. For the first time in her life, Mia felt like she could breathe, really breathe, and that made all the difference. Jonathan's influence in her life didn't end with his offer. He had become a mentor to her, guiding her not just in her studies, but in understanding what it meant to live a fulfilled life. He encouraged her to take risks, to pursue what excited her, and to never underestimate her worth. He reminded her that in life, it was okay to want more, to accept help when it was offered, and to ask for what she needed. One afternoon, as Mia sat in the campus library working on a project, she received a message from Jonathan. It wasn't the first time he had checked in, but this message felt different. Jonathan: "I've been thinking about how far you've come, Mia. It's not just about the opportunity I gave you. It's about how you've embraced it and turned it into something incredible. You have an incredible future ahead of you. and I'm proud to be a part of it." Mia sat back in her chair, a smile spreading across her face. The words touched her deeply. It wasn't just that Jonathan had given her an opportunity. It was that he had believed in her before she had believed in herself. And that belief had sparked something inside her, a fire she hadn't known existed. As she looked around at the life she was building, Mia felt a deep sense of gratitude. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges to face, obstacles to overcome. But for the first time, she felt like she was on the right path. She was no longer defined by the hardships she had faced. She was defined by the strength she had discovered within herself. One evening, as Mia sat with her family at dinner, she looked around at their faces, her mother's proud smile, her siblings' hopeful expressions, and felt a deep sense of peace. She had made the right decision. She had taken a chance on herself, and now she could finally see the life she had always dreamed of. It wasn't just about success in her career or in her education. It was about finding happiness in the journey. It was about realizing that she deserved to live for herself just as much as she had lived for others. Jonathan had given her the chance to rewrite her story, but it was Mia who had chosen to take it, who had embraced her own potential. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, or the girl who had sacrificed everything for her family. She was someone who had found her own voice, her own dreams, and who was determined to make them a reality. And as she looked ahead to the future, Mia knew that the road wouldn't always be easy. But she was no longer afraid. She had finally learned that it was okay to accept help, that it was okay to take a step forward. And that in itself was the greatest transformation of all. If Mia's journey has inspired you to take a leap and embrace new opportunities, don't forget to like, comment, and share this story with others who might need a little encouragement today. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe for more heartwarming stories of transformation and hope. This CTA encourages engagement and invites viewers to subscribe while tying into the overall theme of transformation and growth. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments.